Norwegian researchers have for the first time captured footage of a 30-year-old shipwreck. Researchers from Norway and Russia have discovered radioactive leakage from a Soviet-era submarine wreck in the Norwegian Sea.
The deep ocean is like a haunted house. It's dark, it's cold, and it's full of noises you can't explain. Now we have proof. Declassified Cold War submarine logs just hit the public, and they detail a sound so baffling it remains a mystery. Sonar picked up something active. Something that wasn't supposed to be there. We're going to look at the official report, but what most people don't realize is this wasn't a one-time thing. This single sound is the key to unlocking a much larger global phenomenon that could change everything you thought you knew. The duck hunt. So here's the deal. During the height of the Cold War, the deep ocean was the most terrifying battlefield on Earth. It was a high-stakes game of cat and mouse played in total darkness thousands of feet below the surface. We're talking about American and Soviet nuclear submarines, the most advanced machines ever built, hunting each other. Their one and only sense was sound. They were, quite literally, blind. They listened for the faintest ping of an enemy sonar or the whisper-quiet hum of a propeller. And get this, that's when they started hearing it. Soviet submariners in particular began logging a sound that made no sense at all. This is the information that's just now coming to light, pieced together from these old declassified reports. They gave it a nickname, quackers, or kavakari in Russian, because that's exactly what it sounded like. A strange, high-pitched, frog-like quack that would appear out of nowhere. But this was no duck. This was deep in the Atlantic and Arctic Oceans, thousands of feet down, far from any land. The crazy part is, the sound wasn't random. It seemed intelligent. These newly released logs, combined with reports from former commanders, paint a chilling picture. A Soviet submarine, a massive city-ending boat, would be moving on silent running, trying to stay hidden. And suddenly, quack. The sonar operators, their ears trained to catch anything, would freeze. They'd track the sound, and they found it was moving. Worse, it seemed to be responding to them. If the submarine changed depth, the quacker would follow. If the sub sped up, the quacker would keep pace. It would circle them as if it were inspecting them. Imagine being in that metal tube. You're surrounded by crushing pressure, thousands of pounds per square inch that wants to turn your sub into a soda can. Your life depends on being silent and invisible, and you have something just outside the hull making a sound like a toy, toying with you. The crews were, and that's putting it lightly, completely unnerved. The sound was so repeatable, so distinct, that at first the Soviets were convinced it was a new top-secret American device. Maybe it was a new kind of sonar, or maybe it was some kind of small, autonomous underwater drone designed to track them and report their position. The quack could have been its own sonar ping or a way of communicating with a mothership. This theory made sense. The US and the USSR were in a desperate race, and a device that could find a silent sub would win the war. But here's the catch. The Americans started hearing them too. Or at least they were tracking the same mystery. The Americans in turn thought the quackers were a top-secret Soviet development. Both sides spent millions trying to figure it out. The Soviet Navy even set up a special intelligence group to collect all the data. They ran special expeditions. The Americans did too. And both sides came up with nothing. The man-made origin just didn't add up. The quackers were too good. They could appear and disappear at will. They could follow a sub for days. The sheer cost of building a fleet of these things and scattering them all over the ocean was something even the superpowers couldn't afford. So what was it? The next logical step was biological. Maybe it was a new animal. This theory gained a lot of traction. In fact, decades later, a sound just like it was recorded off the coast of New Zealand. They called it the bioduck. The leading theory now is that it's the call of an Antarctic minke whale, a call that we just hadn't identified yet. Case closed, right? The quacker was just a whale. Yeah, about that. That's the easy answer. That's the one that lets everyone sleep at night. But the commanders who heard the sound, they didn't buy it. The bioduck sound, the whale call, is one thing, but the behavior of the quackers is another. Reports from those Soviet logs say the sounds weren't just random calls. They were conversational. One quacker would talk, and the others would stay quiet as if they were listening. Then the first one would stop and another would respond. This wasn't a pod of whales, this was communication. And it gets weirder. Some commanders reported that the quackers seemed to mimic their own sonar communications. They were learning. Vladimir Shigin, a former Russian Navy captain, said that those who heard them always had a strong impression of completely conscious actions. This is where the wild theory comes in, the one that no one wants to talk about. What if it wasn't a whale or a military device? What if it was both or neither? What most people don't realize is that these quacker reports were often filed alongside other cherished stories from submarine commanders. Stories that were never officially logged because they didn't want to be called insane. Stories of glowing balls and cylinders in the ocean, objects that would race past their subs at impossible speeds, unidentified submerged objects, USOS. What if the quackers were the sound of these USOS? What if they weren't tracking the subs to attack them but to study them? What if that quack was their language, or their own sonar so advanced it sounded like a simple animal? And then, the most baffling part of all. In the late 1980s, as the Cold War started to wind down, the quackers just stopped. They vanished. One day the oceans were full of them, and the next, silence. If it was a military program, it was shut down. If it was an animal, it either went extinct or just swam away. Or if you believe the wild theory, did they finish their research? Did they get what they wanted? Or did they just go dark? The quacker remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the Cold War, a sound that was intelligent, responsive, and utterly alien. But these sailors weren't just hearing these things, they were seeing them. A cover-up in the ice. The quacker logs prove that submarine crews were hearing things that shouldn't exist. But what happens when there's photographic evidence? So here's the deal. We have to go back to 1971, the height of the Cold War. The quacker phenomenon is in full swing. A U.S. nuclear attack submarine, the USS Trepang, is on a mission in the Arctic Ocean, somewhere between Iceland and Norway. The sub is on a special mission. It's operating beneath the polar ice cap, a place that is, quite literally, the most desolate, isolated place on Earth. They are running tests on their weapon systems and doing scientific experiments. The story goes that they're on a routine trip. But what happened next was anything but routine. In 2015, a set of grainy black and white photos was leaked online. The source claimed they were from the USS Trepang, March 1971. And they show something impossible. The first few photos are taken through the submarine's periscope. You can see the crosshairs. And in the water, there are objects. One of them is a massive cigar-shaped object. It's dark, metallic, and floating. There are no markings, no windows. It's just there. In the middle of the Arctic Ocean, one of the most restricted military zones on the planet. But then the photos get even weirder. The next set shows a different object. This one is triangular. It's huge, and it looks like it's in trouble. One photo seems to show water or steam pouring off of it. The next photo is even more dramatic. The object is at a sharp angle and it looks like it's either exploding or plunging into the ocean. The final photos show the cigar object again, floating silently, as if it's watching the other craft go down. These photos exploded. This was, for many, the smoking gun. Proof of USOS, unidentified submerged objects, proof that something else was in the ocean with us. The theories went wild, and for good reason. What could this be? The first and most obvious wild theory is that this is an alien craft, a USO. Why the Arctic? Well, what better place to hide a secret base than under a 2-mile thick sheet of ice? It's cold, it's remote, and no one is ever going to find it. Maybe the Trepang just got lucky. It surfaced at the wrong place, at the wrong time, and stumbled on something it was never supposed to see. Maybe it even witnessed a battle. That triangular craft, plunging into the water. Was it shot down? And was that cigar-shaped craft the winner? This theory is terrifying. It means our oceans, our planet, is a battlefield for someone else. The second wild theory is a little more down to earth, but just as crazy. This isn't an alien, this is ours. Or theirs. We're talking about a top-secret Skunk Works project, an underwater SR-71. A secret military craft so advanced, it might as well be alien. In the 1970s, the US was pushing the limits of technology. So was the Soviet Union. Is it really that hard to believe one side built a secret triangle-shaped submarine or a giant cigar-shaped mothership sub? If so, the Trepang didn't just stumble on a UFO, it stumbled on the biggest military secret on Earth. And that triangular craft wasn't shot down. It was a failed test, a multi-billion-dollar project sinking to the bottom of the ocean. A third wild theory? This one is a mind-bender. Some people have looked at these photos and suggested time travel, that these craft aren't from another world, but from another time, that they are human craft from our future coming back to observe a critical point in our history, the Cold War. It's an insane idea. But look at the photos. They don't look like anything from the 1970s. So, what's the official story? What does the Navy say? Yeah, about that. This is where it gets good. For years, the Navy was totally silent, but as the photos kept spreading, the story got a debunking. The story goes that the admiral who was the commanding officer of the Trepang at the time, Dean Sackett, was contacted, and he denied it. He said he was on the ship in March 1971 and he saw no UFOs. He said the story was not accurate, and then the official explanation came out. These aren't UFOs. They're test targets, specifically Zeppelin-shaped targets used for torpedo testing. And that triangular craft that's exploding, that's just a torpedo hitting the target. Case closed, right? Just like the Quackers were just whales. But come on, look at the photos. A test target? Does that look like a test target? Why would a test target be so massive? And why would it look so metallic and advanced? And why would the Navy be testing torpedoes in the middle of a secret patrol zone under the Arctic ice? This is the cash cow pivot. Of course they'd say that. What else is the Admiral going to say? Oh yeah, that was the day we saw the alien ship. It was a Tuesday. No, he's a military man. He's going to deny. That's his job. What most people don't realize is the Trepang incident in 1971 and the peak of the Quacker reports in the mid-1970s are at the exact same time. This isn't a coincidence. It's a pattern. The Soviets are hearing intelligent objects that glow. The Americans are photographing metallic objects that fly and sink. They're not two different stories. They are the same story, told from two different sides of the war. They were both encountering something. And those somethings weren't the only mystery. The active, intelligent sounds are just one piece of the puzzle. What is louder than a whale? The Quackers and the Trepang photos were scary because they seemed intelligent. They were a specific threat, a who that was watching. But the ocean has another kind of mystery. Not a who, but a what. A sound that's scary, not because it's smart, but because of its brute, raw power. We have to jump forward to 1997. The Cold War is over. The Soviet Union is gone. The Navy's top-secret underwater microphone network, called SOSUS, is now being used by scientists. This network was built for one reason: to listen for Soviet subs. It was a web of hydrophones, or underwater mics, laid all across the Pacific and Atlantic. And in 1997, this network, now in the hands of NOAA, picked up it. They called it the bloop. It was an ultra-low frequency sound, a deep, powerful rumble. And here's the wow factor. It was so loud, so unbelievably loud, that it was picked up by hydrophones over 3,000 miles apart. Let that sink in. A sound that could be heard across the entire Pacific Ocean. To do that, the source had to be, well, enormous. Scientists at NOAA were baffled. They had never heard anything like it. It didn't match the signature of a bomb. It didn't match a submarine. It didn't match an earthquake. The sound profile. It rose in frequency over about a minute, and it had a unique characteristic that sounded, well, biological. Naturally, everyone's mind went to one place: a monster. Scientists quickly did the math. For a living creature to make that sound, it would have to be many, many times larger than the biggest blue whale on Earth. The blue whale is the loudest animal we know. Its call can travel for hundreds of miles. This bloop sound dwarfed it. It wasn't just louder. It was an entirely different category of loud. This was the birth of a legend. The bloop was, for many, the first real evidence of a Leviathan, a Cthulhu, a creature so gigantic it lives in the 95% of the ocean we have never ever seen. It lives in the crushing dark of the trenches, a place with more pressure than the surface of Venus. And it had just spoken. This theory held for years. It was the great unsolved mystery of the deep, until NOAA changed its mind. Yeah, about that. Years later in 2005 and then again in 2012, NOAA came out with a new explanation. The official explanation. It wasn't a monster. It was an ice quake. The sound, they said, was from a massive iceberg breaking off a glacier in Antarctica. The sound of it cracking and scraping against the seafloor. That's what made the bloop. The official story is that the sound profile is consistent with glacial movement. And just like the quackers were whales and the Trepong photos were test targets, the bloop was just ice. Case closed, right? But there's a reason this still feels wrong to so many people. A lot of researchers who looked at the original data noted that the consensus flipped almost overnight. For years, the data was baffling, and the leading theory was unknown, possibly biological. Then suddenly it was definitely an ice quake. This screams cover up to a lot of people. Why would they cover it up? Maybe because the monster theory is right, and they just don't want us to know. They don't want to cause a global panic. What most people don't realize is that the ice quake explanation is just a theory. It's the most likely explanation. It's not proven. So let's dive into the wild theories. Wild Theory 1. It is a creature, a Cthulhu, a Leviathan. It's so big it eats blue whales. It's so old it was here before the dinosaurs. It lives in the Mariana Trench and it only wakes up every few hundred years. And in 1997, it stirred. Wild Theory 2. It's not one creature, it's a colony. A massive bioacoustic reef that is sentient. A single continent-sized organism, and the bloop was the sound of it. Breathing. Wild Theory 3. This one is really out there. The bloop is ice, but not in the way you think. What if this Leviathan doesn't live in the ocean? It is the ocean. Or what if it eats ice? What if the bloop is the sound of a truly massive creature feeding on an Antarctic glacier? Wild Theory 4. It's not biological, it's geological, but not an ice quake. What if it's a gate, a portal, a sound so low and powerful it's the noise of a door opening from another dimension deep on the ocean floor, and something came through, and the bloop isn't alone. That's the scariest part. The same SOSUS network recorded other giant mystery sounds. There was Julia, recorded in 1999, a long, eerie moan that lasted for 15 seconds. The official story? An iceberg. There was Slow Down, recorded in 1997, a sound that slowly descended in frequency over 7 minutes, like a giant machine, winding down. The official story? An iceberg. There was The Train, another low rumbling sound. The story? An iceberg. It's all icebergs. Isn't that convenient? Quackers are whales. Trepong is a target. The bloop is an iceberg. It's a pattern of explaining away the mystery. What if the ice quake theory is the perfect cover? The sounds are coming from Antarctica, but it's not the ice that's making them. It's what's living, under the ice. The ocean is full of monsters, real or imagined. But what about the land? You think you're safe? A global sickness. You can pull the sailors out of the sub. You can drain the oceans of all the bloops and quackers. You're standing on solid ground. You should be safe, but you're not. Because the same kind of mystery, the same unidentified sounds are happening right here. So, here's the deal. We have to talk about the hum. In the early 1990s, in the small, quiet town of Taos, New Mexico, people started reporting a sound. It was a persistent, low-frequency rumble, a droning noise. The crazy part is, only a small number of people could hear it, about 2% of the population. For them, it was maddening. They said it sounded like a distant diesel engine idling just out of sight. It was worse at night. It was worse indoors. And what most people don't realize, this isn't just an annoying noise, it was torture. People who heard it, the hearers, reported severe headaches, nausea, dizziness, sleepless nights, a feeling of vibration in their chest. It was making them sick. And the worst part, when you're the only one who can hear it, everyone else thinks you're crazy. The town went looking for the source. They brought in scientists. They brought in researchers with high-tech sound equipment, and they found nothing. The sound, it wasn't on the microphones. It was so low frequency or so strange that their equipment couldn't pick it up. But the hearers, they felt it. This wasn't just in Taos. This is a global phenomenon. The Windsor hum in Ontario, Canada, has been plaguing residents for years. The Bristol hum in England, the Auckland hum in New Zealand. All over the world, small pockets of people are being haunted by a sound that no one can find. So, what is it? What are the wild theories? Theory 1, the mundane. High-pressure gas pipelines. One researcher spent a decade on this and found that all the hum locations were near these big gas lines. Maybe the sound is the gas vibrating in the pipes at a frequency that travels through the ground. But if it's just a pipe, why can't they find it? And why does it start and stop? Theory 2, the military. This is the big one. It's a side effect of a deep underground military base. The US is riddled with these secret underground bases. What if the hum is the sound of tunneling? The vibration from a giant secret boring machine? Or what if it's the ventilation system for a base that's miles underground? The sound travels up through the rock and only some people's bodies are tuned to the right frequency to feel it. Theory 3, HAARP. This is a classic. HAARP is a research program in Alaska that studies the atmosphere. The wild theory is that it's actually a giant weapon, that it can control the weather, or that it can beam low-frequency waves through the Earth as a test. And the hums all over the world, they're just the side effects of this giant global experiment. And it's not just quiet hums. Sometimes the sound is the exact opposite. We have to talk about skyquakes. All over the world for centuries, people have reported booms, sudden thunderous explosions from a clear blue sky. They are powerful enough to shake windows, rattle buildings, and set off car alarms. In New York, they're called the Seneca guns. In Bangladesh, the Barisal guns. It sounds like a cannon, but there is no cannon. It's not thunder, there are no clouds. So, what is it? Theory 1, mundane. Meteors exploding high in the atmosphere, or sonic booms from military aircraft. Theory 2, geological. Tectonic strain, the Earth's crust stretching and then snapping, or methane gas building up underground and then exploding. Theory 3, the wildest. It's not from Earth, it's celestial. Coronal mass ejections, solar flares, hitting our atmosphere and exploding like a thunderclap. Or it's a space-based weapon, the rods from God. A secret military satellite test-firing a weapon on an empty patch of ocean, and the sound, the shockwave, travels for thousands of miles. The hum is a vibration that makes you sick. The skyquake is an explosion that makes you jump. They're two sides of the same coin, a coin that says the planet itself is being used as a laboratory. But what if these sounds aren't just tests anymore? What if they're weapons? The war that never ended. This is where it all comes together. This is where the story stops being a mystery and starts being a warning. We've gone from the Cold War deep to the modern day, and the same thing is happening. The quackers made sailors paranoid and afraid. The hum makes hearers sick and anxious. What if a sound could do more? What if it could harm you? So here's the deal. In 2016, something deeply, deeply disturbing started happening at the U.S. Embassy in Havana, Cuba. Diplomats, spies, and their families. They began to get sick, suddenly and without warning. They would be at home or in the embassy building, and they would be hit by a wave of something. They reported dizziness, splitting headaches, nausea, memory loss, trouble concentrating, and many of them heard something. A strange, high-pitched sound, a grating, focused noise, a chirping, a clicking, a grinding. It would happen right before the symptoms hit. This became known as Havana syndrome. It wasn't one or two people. We're talking hundreds of U.S. officials. It wasn't just in Havana. It spread. China, Germany, Russia, Austria, even Washington, D.C. It was happening to CIA agents, White House staff, and their children. These people were flown back to the U.S. for testing, and doctors were stunned. Their brains showed physical changes, measurable, detectable, damage. It was like they had been in a car crash, like they had a concussion, but without the concussion. There was no impact. So what is it? The official story? Anomalous health incidents. That's the government speak. They still say, we don't know. The intelligence community is split. Some studies, 5 agencies in fact, said it's highly unlikely to be a foreign adversary. They said it's probably psychogenic, that it's mass hysteria, that it's all in their heads, all in their heads. The brain damage is all in their heads. This is the new icequake. It's the new test target. It's the official story that just stinks. So what's the wild theory? The one that is so obvious it has to be true? It's a weapon, a directed energy weapon. This is some next-level sci-fi stuff. Theory 1, it's a microwave beam. A focused beam of high-energy microwaves shot from a van or a nearby building through the walls and into a person's brain. It cooks them, just slightly. It creates tiny bubbles in their inner ear or their brain tissue. The sound they hear, that chirping, that's just a side effect. The real damage is silent. Theory 2, it's a sonic weapon, a new kind of LRAD, a focused beam of ultrasound, frequencies so high or so low that you can't hear them, but they hit you. They vibrate you from the inside out. They rattle your skull. They disrupt your brain. And now, here is the final terrifying connection, the grand unifying theory. What if the quackers were this? Go back to the Cold War. The Soviet reports. They said the quackers caused phobia and fear. They made sailors afraid to go on watch. They were afraid of losing their sanity. What if the quackers weren't just tracking the subs? What if they were testing an early version of this exact weapon? What if that quack was a focused beam of something designed to see if they could make an enemy crew break? The Cold War was a lab. The quackers were the experiment. And Havana syndrome? That's the final product. It's portable. It's silent. It's deniable. You can harm, eliminate an enemy without firing a shot, and you can blame it on hysteria. So, are these newly released logs just a cute historical mystery? A story about ducks and whales? Or are they the origin story of a war? A war that never ended. A war that just went silent. A war that's being fought right now, in frequencies we can't see, in sounds we can't hear, until it's too late. So, what's really out there in the dark? Are we alone in the deep, or is something staring back? Let us know your wildest theory below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.